New head coach, new coaching staff, new quarterback. Has OU relinquished the Big 12? Welcome to the Voice of College Football, Boomer Sooner. Please join us each and every Wednesday live at 12:30 Eastern, 11:30 a.m. where it counts for Oklahoma Sooners Live as we take your comments and questions with Jason Ray. All right, let's get to our record prediction for Oklahoma. Of course, Baylor and Oklahoma State waged war on the defensive side of the ball. Came down to that much for a Big 12 championship. But again, Oklahoma State and Baylor in the Big 12 championship game. Two other teams for the first time since we've had a Big 12 championship game renewal since the conference expanded and got back a Big 12 title game at the end of the year. Oklahoma ruling the Big 12 in the college football playoff era. And despite what Sooner fans and others would consider a disappointing season because the team appeared primed to make a run for the national championship, not just the Big 12. Of course, they came within one score, that much, of going back to the Big 12 championship game. Now, Brent Venables, defensive guru, replacing Lincoln Riley, offensive guru off to USC. Caleb Williams gone. Dillon Gabriel, phenomenal statistics in his years with UCF as starting quarterback for 3 years, including the 32-4 touchdown to pick ratio. Sooner fans would take that. Let's look at the schedule. And it starts out with UTEP on September 3rd, followed by Kent State. Those have to be wins, of course. Then the Sooners travel to Nebraska. We know what happened last season with Nebraska football, period, and the Oklahoma game was a microcosm of that. Losing close, one score. Casey Thompson moves on from Texas quarterback, where he threw 5 touchdowns for the Longhorns in a almost win. Of course, the great Oklahoma comeback led by Caleb Williams. But this time, Casey Thompson playing for Nebraska, and the Sooners go to the Huskers in one of the great former rivalries in college football in the 60s, 70s, and 80s that we all watched over and over and over a zillion times. All right, then it's K-State to open up Big 12 play. A lot of people like K-State as a dark horse in the Big 12, me included. We open up October with Oklahoma at TCU. TCU's in a down cycle. Of course, Sonny Dykes taking over the program from Gary Patterson, who's off to Texas as an assistant coach, and the opponent for the Sooners in one of the great rivalries in college football, Red River style. What was the final? 54-48, something in that range. Just a shootout. Of course, Texas blew a 28-7 lead at halftime. Sooners came roaring back. They own the series, but Texas always plays them tough, even when Texas is not back, and it's October 8th. Then we dive into an October 15th game. Lance Leopold had Kansas playing good football down the stretch last year, including a scare in Lawrence, Kansas against Oklahoma. Then we've got the game at Iowa State. Of course, the Cyclones losing as much senior productivity on offense than any team in the country across the board. Brock Purdy, receivers, tight end, offensive line, etc. October 29th, but of course Iowa State has been a thorn in the Sooners' side. Then we dive into November play with Baylor at home. Oklahoma State's at home. That's key, you would think. Oklahoma's got a tricky one. Possible trap game at West Virginia on November 12th. And then finally, not playing Bedlam the final week of the season this year. Don't like that. Don't understand it. Think that's rivalry weekend. But of course, maybe the Big 12 making a move to set up other rivalries for the conference once OU and Texas exit. And it's a game against new head coach Joey McGuire in Texas Tech, who finished 7-6 with a bowl win last year. Oklahoma, most likely losses, of course, would be Baylor and Oklahoma State. They're the two best teams, the most defensive-minded teams, just the best solid rosters on the schedule with the head coaches that know what they're doing. Dave Aranda, brilliant. Mike Gundy, steady with Oklahoma State. Those are the likely losses as we take it from the top. Can't really separate those much. I do like Baylor a slight smidge over Oklahoma State. Then you've got the grouping of Texas and Kansas State, I believe, as potential losses. And both of those games at home, though, for the Sooners, as is Baylor and Oklahoma State. And that could be a huge key to the schedule. While Oklahoma has to go on the road a number of times against lesser opponents, and that could make for some dicey type situations, the probable 4 best teams in the conference, other than the Sooners, are at home in Norman. Here's a wild card game, of course. Nebraska on the road. Huskers lost all those close games against top 10 teams last year. Or West Virginia, that was a close game in 21. Late field goal won it for OU 16-13. Or Even Iowa State, I understand all the personnel losses and then nobody's expecting much from Iowa State, but it is a road game. Matt Campbell knows what he's doing. He loves to play the underdog role. Oklahoma at Iowa State could be tricky. All right, final record for the Sooners, 10-2. They do slip by Nebraska. That is a potential loss. I give them a 70% chance of winning on the road in Lincoln. So 7-2, they lose the 2 games in the Big 12, and we just laid out the most likely candidates. Your thoughts on Oklahoma football here in 22. Leave your record projections down below. Again, 10-2, 7-2 for the Sooners and Brent Venables' kickoff to the Venables era in Norman. Right here, the voice of college football. Join us on Wednesday, 11:30 a.m. Central, OU Live.